You're sitting across from someone. They're smiling, saying all the right things. Nodding at the right moments, their voice warm, steady, convincing, and yet something inside you tightens. Not fear, not suspicion, just a quiet, restless discomfort you can't explain. Because sometimes, long before the mind understands, the body already knows. You've felt this before. That strange tension when words and energy refuse to align, when kindness feels rehearsed, when charm feels engineered. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, just tiny fractures in the emotional atmosphere. A pause that lingers too long, a compliment that feels oddly strategic, a reaction that arrives half a second late, and your intuition whispers, something is being managed here. Human interaction is rarely just communication. It is performance, negotiation, prediction, defense. Behind every conversation lives a quieter dialogue, one driven by needs we rarely admit. Approval, control, validation, safety. People do not simply express themselves. They position themselves, and once you begin to see this, you can never fully unsee it, because intentions rarely announce themselves directly. They leak through micro-expressions, through inconsistencies, through the subtle tension between what is said and what is protected. Psychology has long understood this. Carl Jung once observed that the human psyche is not a single voice, but a layered architecture of masks, fears, and adaptations. What you meet is rarely the whole person. What you meet is the version designed for survival. And survival, by its nature, is strategic. Not malicious, not evil, but strategic. Every human being learns, at some point, how to influence perception, how to soften rejection, how to hide insecurity, how to shape reactions. What we often call dark psychology is not always darkness. Sometimes it is simply unconscious self-preservation. But unconscious strategies still produce real effects and real consequences. You've seen it. The person who mirrors your opinions too perfectly, agreeing with you not out of connection, but calibration. The one whose empathy feels strangely mechanical, present, but never vulnerable. The one whose warmth arrives strongest when they want something and fades when they don't. Nothing overt. Nothing provable. Yet something always feels off balance. One of the oldest psychological signals is when the emotional tone and behavioral signals refuse to synchronize. The smile without softness in the eyes. The reassurance delivered with subtle tension. The confidence that collapses under unexpected questions. Your brain may rationalize, but your nervous system detects pattern deviations instantly, because authenticity has a rhythm, and fabrication has friction. Then there is exaggerated charm, not warmth. Charm. Warmth invites. Charm persuades, warmth relaxes. Charm captivates. The difference is subtle, but deeply felt. Charm often carries urgency, a sense that you are being gently guided toward a specific impression. Toward liking, toward trust, toward emotional investment. Not because connection is unfolding, but because it is being accelerated. Humans are deeply influenced by reciprocity. When someone gives attention, validation, admiration, you feel an almost automatic pull to respond, to soften, to open, to return the emotional favor. This is not weakness. This is wiring, which is why intentional intensity can be so powerful and so dangerous. You may notice selective vulnerability, stories that appear intimate, yet feel strangely curated, pain shared without visible discomfort, struggles described without emotional texture. It sounds honest, but something about it feels polished, because genuine vulnerability is messy, uncertain, uneven, unscripted. When emotional exposure feels too smooth, it often serves a purpose beyond expression. It becomes Positioning disguised as openness. Another signal hides in reactions to boundaries. Healthy intentions respect resistance. Manipulative intentions negotiate it. Not aggressively, not confrontationally, but persistently. A slight guilt tone, a subtle disappointment, a gentle reframing of your hesitation, until your no slowly feels unreasonable, and their persistence feels justified. Because influence rarely feels like force. It feels like persuasion layered with emotion. Then comes inconsistency. Perhaps the most psychologically revealing of all signals. Affection fluctuates with compliance. Attention fluctuates with usefulness. Patience fluctuates with control. Not chaotic, but conditional. Human behavior always follows invisible rules, and conditional warmth reveals invisible contracts. I am warm when rewarded. I withdraw when resisted. The pattern is rarely loud, but the nervous system notices everything. Projection also whispers intention. When someone repeatedly attributes motives to others, people are always selfish. You can't trust anyone. Everyone has hidden agendas. Psychology understands projection as a defense mechanism. What disturbs us internally often gets relocated externally, because accusing the world is sometimes easier than confronting the self, and repeated projection often reveals the architecture of someone's inner world. Not truth about others, but truth about them. Perhaps the most unsettling signal is emotional asymmetry, when someone studies you deeply, yet remains psychologically opaque. They know your fears, your triggers, your insecurities, but their inner world stays carefully guarded. Information flows in one direction, which slowly shifts the power dynamic. Because knowledge creates leverage, and leverage shapes influence. Not always intentionally, but never accidentally. None of these behaviors guarantee manipulation. That's the uncomfortable truth. Because human beings are complex, layered, contradictory, often unaware of their own patterns. What looks strategic may sometimes be insecurity. What feels distant may sometimes be fear. What appears calculated may sometimes be protection. Dark psychology is rarely about villains. It is about survival mechanisms operating without conscious awareness. And this is where understanding becomes more nuanced, more human. Because many manipulative behaviors begin as adaptations. A child learns charm to avoid conflict, learns compliance to secure affection, learns persuasion to gain safety. Over time, strategies hardened into personality. Not evil, just conditioned. But conditioned strategies still shape relationships, still influence dynamics, still leave emotional footprints. As adults, these patterns create subtle consequences: chronic confusion, emotional exhaustion, the strange feeling of being slightly off-center around certain people. Not because something dramatic happened, but because something invisible kept happening. Tiny adjustments, tiny pressures, tiny distortions of emotional reality, until intuition feels unreliable and self-trust quietly erodes. But here's the deeper realization, the most psychologically unsettling truth. You are not just observing these patterns in others. You have lived them yourself. Because every human being learns some version of psychological strategy. You've softened truths to avoid discomfort, adjusted reactions to preserve harmony, withheld feelings to maintain connection, not manipulation, adaptation, which is why this topic feels so personal, so uncomfortable, so deeply familiar. Intentions are rarely black and white. They exist in gradients, between fear and control, between insecurity and influence, between connection and self-protection. Psychological awareness is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It is about recognizing the subtle language of human behavior, the silent negotiations beneath conversation, the invisible motives beneath expression. Because once you begin to truly observe people, you stop listening only to words. You start sensing patterns, energy shifts, consistency rhythms, emotional textures, not judging, not diagnosing. Simply noticing, with clarity instead of naivete, with awareness instead of unconscious absorption. And perhaps the most liberating shift of all is this: understanding hidden intentions does not make you cynical. It makes you perceptive. It allows compassion without blindness, empathy without self-abandonment, connection without unconscious vulnerability. Because seeing human strategy clearly does not kill Tres et Refinas Italiano. Human beings are not puzzles to be solved. They are patterns to be understood. Contradictory, protective, beautifully imperfect, and intentions. Intentions are rarely hidden to deceive. More often, they are hidden to survive. So the next time you feel that quiet tension, that subtle internal tightening, pause. Not to accuse, not to analyze, but to listen to the oldest intelligence you possess, the one that notices long before logic speaks. Because beneath all psychology, beneath all theory, your nervous system has been reading human intention your entire life, and it is far wiser than you've been taught to believe.